Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to a special Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Edmundo Resendez. Today, in our monthly series dealing with Latinos and mental health, from stigma to treatment, we take a look at the Forest Nick Intervention Consortium of Doña Ana County, whose mission is to seek to contribute to the orderly administration of justice and the protection of the community and its citizens by reducing recidivism and undue detention of persons with mental illness and or developmental disabilities. Our guest today is the Executive Director for FICDAC, Ron Gurley. Ron, welcome to Fronteras.
Glad to be here.
I started the conversation by discussing how your organization goes about fulfilling such a strong mission statement.
Well, we got organized and got started with this in 1999 with a small grant from the state of New Mexico, from the state office of Department of Health. There's a lot of trends that go around the country, setting up new concepts, trying out new things. So they picked Albuquerque and us for the purposes of setting up a jail diversion program. We did that and started out a process that involved having a place where police officers could take individuals that were mentally ill, that instead of putting them in jail. And we had a contract with Dearson Charities, which is out on Picacho, and it is it's nationally known as Dismas Charities, which is part of a program with federal grants from the federal law enforcement people, the Office of Corrections. We rented the back portion of their facility with 5 apartments, and so the police, state police, local police would just take people there and drop them off like a triage center, and then they would take care of them because they had medical license and so forth, as they still do today. But the state came along, and the feds came along and had to use those rooms for witnesses, federal witnesses, so we couldn't use that anymore. So we moved forward with a program to try to get as many people as are possible out of jail with assistance of their attorneys, both the public defender and the district attorneys, to get them out of jail that didn't really belong there, that they're deteriorating, they're probably going to need to go to the hospital or going to need treatment. And so it evolved from that with almost a constant flow of individuals that we needed to take care of. Back in those days, our hospital here, our Memorial Hospital, it had 12 beds. It still has 12 beds. But the length of stay usually was sometimes as much as 2 weeks. Compared to some of the things that happen today. I know I got experiential learning firsthand because my daughter was in and out of the hospital several times, both these hospitals here. And so you got to learn each time, what actually happens, and they did a pretty good job, but longer lengths of stay. So we've got a lot of homeless population here, as everybody here knows, because of our 2 interstates. And we get tremendous numbers of individuals that are mentally ill.
How have the issues of mental illness changed from 1999 to today, 2014? With regards, you mentioned earlier about there still only being 12 hospitals. Right. The state population has grown.
Well, yeah. See, what's happened to us is that at one time our hospital was a public hospital until it became a nonprofit, and then it became a for-profit. Most all of the hospitals in the state, with exception of UNM and our state hospital, which is called the Behavioral Health Institute, all the rest are private beds. In other words, for-profit operations for the most part, who have to come out with some profit in order to function, and so that leaves us kind of behind the curve in terms of having public beds. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which I've been involved with for many years, they say that you need 50 public beds, inpatient beds for adults for every 100,000 population if everything else is in place. I think our census says we're about 2.5 million in New Mexico. We have 84 beds in Las Vegas. We have 64 beds at UNM, and these 12 beds here that are quasi-public beds in Memorial. I looked up some stuff the other day. The Census Bureau says that Doña Ana County is growing by 435 people a month net, and project that out for 10 years, we're going to be awfully short of inpatient beds. We already are, but look at the future, and our population continues to grow. So we're in a perfect storm situation, because the result of that is they back up into the jails, the de facto mental health hospitals, both here, Bernalillo County, all over. The people like Lovelace and those Presbyterian, they close their psych wards. They don't have them anymore. There's no money in it. It's a lost loser, just like delivering babies. I mean, if they could get away with neither one of those, for bottom line, they probably would.
So where does the fault lie in there not being an increase of public, rooms for this? I mean,
well, there's two, I guess, fundamental reasons. One is the civil rights advocates, strong civil rights advocates. They really don't believe in inpatient beds. They would just as soon have none, and let the community mental health providers and the families have other, social interaction, various kinds of programs where people are being nurtured and taken care of in group homes and that type of thing, which idealistically is not a bad idea. The other is the profit motivation of hospitals and their ability to kind of keep winnowing down the numbers of available beds for people that need stabilization, particularly our state hospital. There was a time when New Mexico had 1,300 public inpatient beds in the state, and now we're down to 84 at the state hospital, which in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and UNM at UNM Medical at UNM in Albuquerque.
So as we look to the future, I mean, are we not creating a problem, or is a problem not being created as a result of this problem? Because if you're saying that some of these patients are going out to the to jails, it becomes kind of a cycle.
Yes, sir. We call it, and it's probably a facetious thing, but commonly we call them frequent flyers. We've got a lot of $1 million men here in this community that cycle in and out of the hospital, in and out of the jail, back. I've got one guy that's been to Las Vegas 26 times to the state hospital. That's not uncommon to go 4, 5, 6 times. An absence of a state hospital down here, in the shortage of bed space up there, it creates this perfect storm that I just mentioned to you. Now, I work with the courts here, with the 3rd Judicial District Court, as a volunteer officer of the court to help assign and train treatment guardians. We had 1,211 involuntary commitment petitions filed in Doña Ana County in the last 12 months. So in other words, to send people to the state hospital. And it's getting worse every day. Very concerned right now because we have such a large number of veterans coming back that have serious, not only post-traumatic stress, but traumatic brain injury, but also they're mentally ill. Several of them have all 3 of those issues, and the homelessness population continues to burgeon and increase.
Let's talk about FIC, DAC.
Forensic, once again, you know, you're born, somebody gives you a name, like my name, June or something like that. It's the Forensic Intervention Consortium of Doña Ana County, which is acronymed as FICDAC, which we probably should change it to Compass Mentis or something else, but that's how we're registered with as a nonprofit.
What you have a program that's a jail diversion program.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. How does that program work?
All right. We have a, what we do is we try to hire under professional services contracts. We have individuals that are experienced people. We have a former police officer. We have a former individual that worked in the detention center. Both, the one that was the former police officer has 2 master's degrees. The other individual soon will have her degree, but she worked in the jail for several years. Another woman with a degree in criminology and all of us, including myself, are individuals that are family members ourselves. We have people in our immediate families who are in the system or going through the system or in and out of the system. So they go out and at the request of the public defender generally, they'll go out to the jail and interview this person to see if they meet our criteria. Jail diversion, unfortunately we have to limit the category of folks that we can work with. And pardon the acronyms and everything else, but the manual that's used to describe diagnosis is called the DSM, Roman numeral 4, Axis 1 mental illnesses. Now, that's primarily what we would know to be people with schizophrenia, bipolar disease, which is the most common, major depression, major anxiety, and then post-traumatic stress has been tacked on to that, although it is that you can recover from that, and the others are lifetime brain disorders that qualify you for disability. And quite a number of people, we strive to help them get SSI or Social Security so that they can at least survive.
What about your crisis intervention training that you offer?
We started that same time that we started jail diversion. We decided that, and I come from a background of probation and that type of thing, training and so forth. We decided that we should do that here. And so our first session was here. It was in the Corbett Center with 40 officers in year 2000. And it is a training program that's modeled after the initial training that was called crisis intervention training was in Memphis, Tennessee. And so the Memphis model is primarily what everybody uses now. And it's grown from, there are only 2 places in the state where that happened, but it's grown considerably all over the country. There's an international CIT association. The last conference they had was in Monterey, California. 1,500 officers were there from all over the world. And so it's being done all over the place using the right kind of what I call fidelity. In other words, this training, the full 40-hour certification program, involves scenarios with actors and actresses like some of our excellent people here at the university who are used all over the state. Monica Mojica and some of those folks, Tom Smith, people that are very, very good at portraying what we're looking for. And we're basically in the CIT training is to backfit these individual officers get them out of command and control into de-escalation mode, where they can have to deal with the mentally ill person differently than they normally do because of just the way that the mentally ill perceive and behave. You cannot anticipate a lot of things unless you want to push the envelope, and then everybody's in danger. We teach them some techniques with a coach. We bring in Gil Nahar, who used to be number 2 man in State Law Enforcement Academy, and our Tony Alvidrez, our police officer, myself, we're able to coach them in having them run into a live acted scenario. I can tell you one real quick. We have an actress with a can of gasoline and a lighter and maybe 2 Molotov cocktails, and she is getting ready to burn up the sheriff's car. And these 2 officers get a 911 call. They arrive. They have never seen this before. They've never seen the actors before, and now de-escalate this person. We've already given them the theory in the first 30 some odd hours, but they learn. It's very much like military training. Through simulations, you learn a lot. And we have debriefs right after the 2 officers have gone in, and they're debriefed on what they did right, what they did wrong. Then we have 9 canned DVD canned programs that were produced here with our Office of Communications, with Jeannie and Mike Ferralis and Tommy Lee. Over the years, we've produced lots of right way, wrong way DVDs.
In the de-escalation process, you know, it has to be very high stress for an officer to approach this. You know, what are some of the things that misconceptions that some of these officers may have about somebody with a mental illness that they may not be familiar with?
What we do in training that I've learned over 30 years in being involved in training is whatever training you're going to do, you need to do a target population analysis. You need to look at, with a subject matter expert group, you have to profile and make a determination of who's out there that you're trying to get information to that they don't know already. The first thing you ask is, what is their education in regard to, these are police officers now, what's their education in regard to adult mental illness? Well, you can get an estimate, probably little or none. What's their experience? Well, some of them 3 years, they've probably had some exposures, and yes, they have had some, and maybe a little training, but the most important one is, what are their fears, attitudes, and beliefs about the mentally ill? Some people are terrified of you mentioned mental illness, and they're just automatically are conditioned to be scared of those folks. And there's others that don't just brush it off as kind of it can be a comical kind of incident, but if you don't shake people down properly, you could also get hurt.
Are there issues in this state when dealing with Latinos and mental health with regards to language and culture barriers that you have to address with the officers?
Yes, in fact, 2 of our main contractors are both Hispanics. They grew up, both of them grew up in Anthony and here in this area. The cultural differences, there are substantial cultural differences in terms of the families. The families are always very, very eager to try to help, but they're not getting across to the families these illnesses is not that easy to do. And it turns out that usually it's the mother or the grandmother. The fathers aren't that, they distance themselves somewhat, and I can understand that. But it is a little more difficult unless you understand kind of where they're coming from. The mothers don't want to see that kid out there in that jail, and yet he's been sick for quite a long time. They don't understand a lot of times the value of medications and all of that, and of course it's a matter of educating and helping them to understand. There's a course called the Mental Health First Aid that's being offered now in Spanish in the southern part of the county. But once a family member starts to say, well, I need to learn more about this, NAMI has a 12-week family-to-family course taught by family members. So the mother or the father or relative of the consumer, if they're their best insulation is to learn more and more and more about the illness, they need to become experts on the illness, the medications, how the system works. Because if they don't, and I learned this the hard way myself, there's nobody else. You got to look for some help. You got to get somebody that's and you don't have to worry about, well, let's see now, if my daughter is mentally ill, that means that most people will think I'm mentally ill too, and it's stigma, and they don't want to mention it, or all those kind of things are at play all the time. Not so much though with the Hispanic population. They're more accepting of the facts. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, in looking at the legal system, is it prepared for the mentally ill, the people that come in, that may have problems, that may not even realize they're mentally ill? How well prepared is the legal system in the state?
It's very poorly prepared. Again, we're back to what I call the presumed to know, and I can speak to, I guess, pretty much to the whole state, because we go around and help with some of this training. But there's no money in mental health law, so you go look it up if you need to do something, and usually they're at a loss of kind of what to do, in particular with treatment guardian programs and that type of thing. But of all people that should know are the officers of the court, and they're a little, well, let's put it this way, they need a lot of training, and we give it to them here deflectively. We get it to them sideways so that their dignity is not overwhelmed, But it is a very important part of our judiciary system. Both the municipal court, our magistrate courts, and our district courts have learned. They've come a long ways in terms of learning. The public defender's office, the district attorney. Now we have an outstanding district attorney now, who is committed to work with the public defender to help that mentally ill person maybe get some resources instead of keeping them in the jail.
In doing my research to put this program together, Latinos in Mental Health, from Stigma to Treatment, I asked around, who do I need to talk to? Who's heavily involved in the mental health field? Your name came up quite frequently. And it seems you're very passionate about this issue. Why is that? Why do you have such passion for the mentally ill?
Well, I mean, you can exceed to your own interest somewhat. My daughter became mentally ill, and when she was 21 years of age, and it just hit us like a bolt of lightning out of the blue. See, the onset of these illnesses that I described, the DSM-5 Axis 1 illnesses, usually don't occur. The onset doesn't occur until between the ages of 17 and 25. So all of a sudden, you've got a psychotic individual on your hands, and your first move is saying, well, it must have been, she took some kind of PCB, some kind of dropped acid or something like that. But once that's eliminated, here you are with somebody that has schizophrenia. And most people right now, if we ran a survey, couldn't begin to tell you what schizophrenia is. It's misused in television all the time. Schizophrenia is not, they think they're different people. That's a multi-personality. It's a brain disorder that is that onset. It doesn't show itself until that age, because the body does, the bones don't quit ossifying until you're around 20. Is a PE major, until you're about 25 years old. So the growth and the what's happening in your growth of your inside your brain, it's hereditary. It comes down from generation to, sometimes it might skip a generation, but almost always you can find somebody back there that had something similar to this. Maybe they went untreated completely. And so once you get into this, the best defense is to learn as much as you can, as fast as you can, from as many people as you can. And that's what we did. That's my wife and I both. We just went in with both feet. And the other little thing that gets in your way, though, when you're 18, you have no rights, a parent has no rights whatsoever in regard to getting information from the hospitals at all, none. And it's like you and I have no business with somebody else's person out there. And they can't understand that, because this was my child, and I therefore, but the doctors and the nurses say, we can't talk to you because of the law. HIPAA, Privacy Act, sorry. So where do you go from there? So that's another little phase that I got appointed as a treatment guardian here in 1994. Nobody told me what that was at all. I got no paperwork, it just, in court they said you are, you know. So we feel, my wife and I, Nicole, we feel like an obligation to educate or to help people learn as much as they can, as fast as they can, and also to try to help people navigate the system, as crippled as the system is.
Well, Mr. Gurley, thank you very much for coming
Sure.
in today to today's Fronteras. We could sit here and have a very long conversation, because
Yes.
I think we barely scratched the surface
Yes,
to what we wanted to discuss. Thank you very much for tuning in to Fronteras. A special thank you to our wonderful producer, Monica Mojica, who helped with today's program, and all the other programs on From Stigma to Treatment on Latinos and Mental Health. Thank you.